Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our podcast, Living Landscapes. This is Ishraq in another episode about the intersection of agriculture and design. After we talked to Clay Gruber last time, I am so honored to talk to Zach Mermel today. With me here. Hello, Zach. How are you doing?
Good morning, Ishraq. I'm great. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you. Thanks for joining us in a very early time in Hawaii. Jack Merrill was born and raised in Hawaii, and he established his firm Ola Design Group there. Zach also works in other parts of the world. Zach, thank you so much for joining us. And, I'm very excited to have this conversation with you. And we talked before, and that's why I was like, okay, we should talk again. And maybe your amazing work and ideas should be delivered to a wider audience. So thank you.
I'm deeply honored to be asked to join this podcast, Ishraq.
Thank you.
Doing
Thank you.
cutting edge work at Purdue.
Thank you. So my first question for you is, you were born in Hawaii and you were raised there, and your work is basically based in Hawaii, but you also work in other parts of the world. How your background in Hawaii and the challenges there, whether it's environmental and social, etc., shaped your interest in landscape architecture, and how did that shift you also to focus on agricultural landscapes?
Mhm. Well, my hometown, where I moved back to a number of years ago, it's called Volcano Village. It's right next to the national park called Hawaii Volcanoes National Park, which is the world's most active volcano.
Mhm.
And I think just growing up nested in nature really informed my worldview and what I wanted to do as a livelihood. And also, Hawaii is incredibly isolated. We're the most isolated landmass in the world. So, lots of superlatives are associated with Hawaii. Uh, so, after I got my environmental science undergrad degree uh, uh, in Northern California, I wanted to give back to the place that I called home. So, I wanted to figure out what's a career that didn't just analyze the science and dynamics of a place, but could actually design for improving things.
Mhm.
So it seems like landscape architecture was a discipline that offered a lot of solutions for the world, and also the world is in an incredibly vulnerable place in the realm of agriculture too. So
Yeah. So you're very change driven, right? You want to change, right? Was that your reason behind like shifting from environmental studies to more like, landscape architecture where I want to see how does that apply, how all these theories of environmental change apply into reality? Am I correct?
yeah, right. I think I come from a family of activists, and my dad's moved in the Peace Corps.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I think maybe just my worldview is more about giving back than taking. So
Hmm.
yeah, and as a white dude, white man, I recognize I come from a pretty privileged place, and if I can be of service in my livelihood, I think that's a good thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I think in the realm of agriculture, there's so many ways that it can be improved. It's one of the largest emitters of carbon globally, and it can also be one of the largest ways that we sequester carbon as well.
Yeah.
But oftentimes, agricultural systems aren't thoughtfully designed. They're just assembled by those who uh, want to focus on production to uh, to the detriment of the wider ecology of a place.
Yeah. Yeah. And in your design practice, I assume, or like, I can see also from your website and from everything we talked about so far that you try to address all these challenges by bringing indigenous aspects of working with the land and understanding the land, etc. Can you tell me a little bit more about the indigenous perspective that you use in your work?
Yeah, I honestly, yeah, I am still learning very much of how to go about engaging with indigenous wisdom of a place. Going to be a lifelong process. And I think if one can tap into the history of peoples working across hundreds of years, maybe sometimes millennia,
Mm-hmm.
of patterns that have proven successful for cultivating crops, that makes the design process a lot more straightforward, and we can design for what the land needs. That the land, which we call Aina here in Hawaii,
Mm-hmm.
that's the larger client. And so another neat thing about designing it from a more indigenous perspective, at least in Hawaii, there's a lot of place names here are still known. So the place name tells us what people prior to Western contact knew
Mm-hmm.
about the dynamics of a place.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and how does that reflect back to your designs? How does that reflect back to when you think about land management and future of this landscape?
Yeah. So I can give an example. So we did
Yeah.
a project for a 60-acre parcel last year, and it was aligned with um, the view lines were aligned with these two cinder cones, volcanic cinder cones, that when I looked up the names of the cinder cones, one meant the place where wind howl, and the other one meant bowl of kaba or aba.
Mm-hmm.
And so the fact that the site aligned with those two cinder cones helped us integrate some of those ideas into this landscape that also had some natural features that resembled an amphitheater. Maybe one idea we presented to the client was maybe the amphitheater could be a convivial space where people can gather for maybe consuming kava, maybe consuming other things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, ava is a ceremonial drink.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. So yeah, so I think like my understanding here is that you try to dig very deep in the history of the place by understanding like previous practices in this specific place from understanding the names. And do you also like work with the indigenous people to understand exactly what does that mean? Or
Right.
you
Yeah.
just do some research? Mhm.
Uh, some of our clients have been nonprofits that have an indigenous perspective.
Mm.
So by yeah, engaging us, yeah, it's a way for them to have a more integrated design process for their land, and uh, also for us to deeply align, yeah, the design with the history and the future of a place. For that project we did last year, uh, uh, I did bring in some Kanaka Maoli, yeah, Native Hawaiian colleagues and consultants of ours to ground the design in the host culture.
Mhm.
Really important to us.
By the host culture, you mean like the place and all the cultures relate
Yeah,
to that place?
yeah. I mean, my parents moved to Hawaii in the 70s, and
Mhm.
so they're effectively settlers, even
Mhm.
though I was born here. But the host culture is the Native Hawaiian culture
Yeah.
here. That I think anyone who moves here or was born here who's not Native Hawaiian, just yeah, we
Yeah.
need to align our lives with the host culture as much as possible.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. How do you integrate native landscapes or what you call it like native scapes and foodscapes together when you think about a site or the future of this landscape?
Yeah. So usually there's a dedicated area for natives in
Mhm.
landscape designs, and then maybe a separate area for food production. But there's this concept of productive conservation, I really resonate with. Like,
Mhm.
how can we have an integration of the area that's being conserved and
Mhm.
while still having it yield productive products?
Mhm.
I was involved in this company called Shaka Tea a number of years ago. They're cultivating this native stingless nettle. Nettles are very nutritious. This is a stingless one
Mm.
that has different culturally significant products that are created from it here in Hawaii. So that I think is among the best examples I can think of, at least from Hawaii, where you can cultivate this native stingless nettle in an agricultural setting, and it yields a high value, economically valuable leaf product, but also serves as a host plant for the endemic Kamehameha butterflies, which is the monarch butterfly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the more we can integrate um, and then separate out different systems, uh, the better we can steward them too. Because I think it's we can design a system, but if it's not properly stewarded, then
Mhm.
the maintenance regime will go up, and I think it won't last very long.
Yeah. Yeah. So you basically try to, I mean, it's a very complicated process, but you're trying not to separate them and try to make them the two land uses, the agricultural and the native land use, to bring them together. And also even to think about um, indigenous plants as, food sources. Am I understanding correct? Yeah.
Right. Food sources, or they can be fiber sources. There's
Mhm.
all these ethnobotanical ways
Mhm.
uh, that that we can have landscapes yield useful products, food and otherwise.
Yeah.
I think also native landscapes, at least in Hawaii, are easily quote unquote invaded by non-native plants.
Mhm.
Um, so I think if there's a dedicated area that is just dedicated, yeah, for native plants, I think the closer it is to the areas where access and circulation bring
Mhm.
the managers of that landscape on a regular basis, that the the native scapes will be stewarded better. Or don't put it, ideally, do not put the native landscapes in a spot where one visits only once a month, because then
Yeah.
they won't be stewarded very well.
Yeah, yeah. So you're thinking about like a whole approach of understanding the land, what was there, and what we need out of the land now. Like, if I'm a farmer, then maybe like I need to have a dollar value at the end. But also, how can we negotiate all these needs at the same time while also thinking about the host culture, as you called it?
Right, right.
Yeah.
There are different types of currency that need to be in circulation. Monetary is one type of currency, but there's also the cultural currency that
Hmm.
can integrate and mesh with, needing to support one's families.
Hmm.
Cultural
Yeah.
setting.
Yeah. And in a previous conversation, we also talked about the ecological currency, right?
Right. We did a neat project a couple of years ago that helped design and select the plants for all the highways on the island.
Mhm.
Uh, and we couldn't really grow. We don't want to grow much food plants along the highways, but there is that was an opportunity to insert a lot of native plants that have non-food stuff value along the highways.
Yeah.
Consulted with some ethnobotanists to select some of those crops.
Hmm. Yeah. When we think about food landscapes, we always think about human food landscapes, but maybe native plants, like, I don't know the specific plants you use, but they are actually foodscapes for other creatures. Yeah,
Right,
they're not necessarily agricultural, but they're like, foodscapes in a different way.
right. We have to think about foodscapes in a more than human world.
Yeah. 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 That's a nice. think to dig in. I had never like read something about this, but maybe I should dig in deeper on into this topic.
And I know in Hawaii, there's also this native roost, which is a native sumac. That's
Mhm.
in the limited work I've done in the area around Armenia. There's a plant I think that's called sumac.
Mhm.
Not pronounced. I don't know if I'm pronounced.
Yeah, some monk. Yeah.
I know it has a lot of ecological value.
Yeah, and like cultural also, cultural values. Like we have it like in my backyard back in Palestine, and like the sumac cultivation harvesting, sorry, season is a big one. It's so hard to harvest and process sumac, but at the end you get so many products, like one, the spice that you use in your food, but then also the leaves. Historically, people used to use them in dyeing clothing, so that's actually where the name came from. So yeah, so I even tried once to dye one of my t-shirts with the sumac leaves, and it was very nice, like butter yellow, greenish color.
And that could be a whole agricultural resurgence, possibly.
Yeah.
In Hawaii, there's a limited exploration of dye plants, but
Mm-hmm.
I know one person who's trying to generate uh, at least a portion of her livelihood in growing dye plants
Oh,
that have been integrated into clothing.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
also very interesting because usually when we think about agricultural landscapes, we just focus on the food parts of it, sometimes maybe like feed for livestock, but talking to you about this, oh, actually agriculture can be for dyeing. But also another person I was talking to recently, he was a product designer, so he said we can grow plants to make furniture. So that's also another way of how we can diversify the agricultural landscapes.
Right. And
Yeah.
see the background I have, it's a bamboo plant, which is
Mhm.
one of the fastest growing plants in the world.
Mhm.
Uh, we're trying to re-enliven the Hawaii chapter of the American Bamboo Society,
Oh.
which bamboo is the plant with 1,000 uses, they say, and there's temperate climate species.
Mhm.
There's well over 1,000, more like 1,500 bamboo species. Uh, there's this interesting effort to grow more bamboo at scale in the tropical climates and for carbon sequestration, and also transforming bamboo into building products by chipping them and then turning them into an OSB product called oriented strand board.
Mhm.
And they sequester a lot more carbon than tree counterparts.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you think you can also integrate these plants in your design projects in the future?
We have a neat upcoming project for the local food bank called the Hawaii Food Basket, and we're hopefully going to be integrating some bamboo into the windbreak features of that 25-acre parcel.
Yeah. Well, it seems like you work with so many interesting projects across different scales and with different clients. That's amazing.
I've been deeply honored to get to work with, so yeah, amazing projects across the years. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I want to know more about some of the projects that you already implemented or worked with. And you mentioned before a project called Aina Momona. Sorry if I said the name wrong. Can you please
Yeah.
tell me about this project?
Yeah. So Aina Momona, it's a Native Hawaiian nonprofit uh, organization based on Maui. No, sorry, based on Molokai. They do work elsewhere, and I got invited to help them with the 7-acre master plan along their shoreline parcel, which is it's an amazing setting.
Mm-hmm.
It's on the south shore of the island of Molokai, and it's the setting is a string of 66 fish ponds
Mm-hmm.
that were installed prior to Western contact.
Mm-hmm.
And at this 7-acre site, the sea level rise is happening in real time. There's
Mm-hmm.
trees that have been inundated by fresh water. So as we undertook this 7-acre master plan project, we had to recognize that the salt water was coming in to what was formerly productive agricultural land. So we needed to align the design with dynamics of salt water.
Mhm.
So we selected halophytic species. Halophytes are salt-loving species. We also put in some suggestions for salt uh, salt pans,
Mhm.
so that there could be low tech but highly productive ways to collect sea salt.
Mm.
Um, we also put in through the site analysis process, we figured out where the likely high level line was going to be for sea level rise. Put the less halophytic salt loving plants for above that. It's a pretty dry site, but there's also natural springs that are bubbling up on the site as well.
Yeah.
Uh, so a part of the design was to hopefully regenerate some of those spring features on the parcel.
Mhm. Interesting. So you worked with the So let me start by asking this question. You talked about like you already had 66 fish ponds that were pre-installed. So we're actually talking about that the landscape was already designed before.
And it's an ingenious system. The ponds are placed where the estuary is. So there was lots of kilo in Hawaiian. That means observation time
Mhm.
to figure out where those ponds are best placed.
Oh, yeah. And
Yeah.
then can you tell me a little bit more about like what was your role to make these ponds function better or, maybe more with the current situation?
Well, I wasn't hired to help out with the fish pond itself.
Uh-huh.
They're an expertise that's
Mm-hmm.
a whole mastery.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, we were engaged more in the land side of things. But these fish ponds can be among the most productive ways of growing protein
Mm-hmm.
in Hawaii.
Yeah. Yeah, and when you came to this project, you did some site analysis. Can you tell me about like what was the process of designing this specific farm or this specific land?
Yes. So I have a client intake form
Mhm.
that I have each client fill out. It's on the website. It takes about 20-25 minutes for the clients to complete. And that really gives me a sense of what their goals are, what they're hoping to vision. It's a streamlined visioning process
Mhm.
before uh, the client selects us and before we select the client, just to make sure there's alignment on both sides. And so once we agree that we're going to engage together, I visit the site and, try to connect with the place that we're going to be designing. And I usually try to walk around the parcel, depending on the size of the parcel, solo. So I um, try to remain as objective as possible around what I'm observing, and then I engage with the client,
Mhm.
the human client. So
Yeah.
again, the land is the larger client that we as humans hopefully align our design and our stewardship practices with.
Mhm.
So for this project here, I've visited the site solo,
Mhm.
as I do almost always. There is some iteration inherent in design, so
Mhm.
I also needed to visit the site multiple other times as well.
Yeah. So you start by going to the land and trying to understand it during maybe 2, 5, 10 hours, depending on the size of the land and also on maybe the complexity also of the land, right?
Right.
And then also you read the client intake form, which is from the human client. What do you do after that?
So I connect with the land and then the human client, and then we compile a goal summary. This is something I learned in my schooling.
Mhm.
Basically summarizing what the client is hoping to achieve and also pairing that goal summary with quantifiable criteria. So
Mhm.
if a client wants an area, a convivial space for gathering 200 people, like this client
Mhm.
wanted, uh, that we can basically lay out that in the different design iterations.
Yeah.
So we craft a number of quantifiable criteria that align with the various goals the client have. And then we do a site analysis usually.
Mhm.
I, I think a site analysis graphic is often useful. Not all clients are necessarily open to paying for it, but I think it gives a really powerful visual representation of the dynamics of a site.
Yeah. And you do like all this analysis based not just on your site. Like my understanding is that you do so much geospatial analysis, consultation with different experts in different fields, like ecologists or, ethnobotanists, etc. And then you analyze the site. Is that correct?
Yeah, if it's possible to bring in other consultants, if the budget allows for that,
Yeah.
certainly am. Yeah, I'm definitely keen to collaborate with other disciplines, and so that the resulting opportunities and constraints that we assess are aligned with with the site's needs and the client's wants.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, the a thorough site analysis I don't think is ever fully done because there's always more to unearth and unpack and discover about the
Mm-hmm.
place.
Yeah.
But a good site analysis I think is crucial to good landscape design and landscape architecture.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And then after you do your site analysis, I don't know, what's the next step?
Usually, in my experience, after the site analysis happens, that really sometimes births the seed of a good design concept.
Mm-hmm.
So, like for this Ainamamona project on Molokai, there was this string of uh, fish ponds, and that seemed that was the crux of the design concept
Mm-hmm.
that we used for this project. Also, for that project, there was this. It was a pretty amazing experience. There was this octopus that came into the one of the fish ponds as we were going through the design process, and it's a pretty powerful. Uh, from what I understand, it's a powerful um, representation of one of the gods in Hawaii called a Kanaloa, which has a ocean form and also a land based form. Um, so we integrated the octopus in the design concept and also the partly the spatial layout of the place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The different tentacles, it inform the axis and circulation around the relatively flat coastal area. So yeah, then the design concept usually that's among the harder things to really encapsulate, but a good site analysis and also figuring out where the sacred spots of a site are.
Yeah.
Like that's part of our design is our job as good designers is
Yeah.
where is the sacred spots? Yeah, I didn't interact with this particular landscape architect, but one of my mentors got to work with him. Richard Haig calls landscape architecture the divine profession. I'm not trying to be religious here, but it's more like the ability to integrate water and rocks and plants and other life forms that allow life to flourish. That
Mm-hmm.
is one of the almost magical things about this profession.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, I totally agree with you. Yeah, and also like, we bring all these things together and make them places where people are happy to go to and also productive. And like, you know, what I also like about your work that you're thinking so much about the productive and the ecological aspects, but also how to bring music to the space and food to the space, etc., etc. So yeah, that's definitely a magical profession and divine, if that's the correct word.
yeah, designing for conviviality is really important for the long-term stewardship of a place. I don't like I don't like the word sustainability so much because it's less about making things better and seems more like a stasis type of word. We want things to evolve over time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think good design evolves the place to even better than it was. Repairs the site too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like this is tied back to your interest in indigenous cultures and how they gradually understand the space and build the space and build the knowledge about the space.
Yeah. Across many generations.
Mhm.
We can pull in place-based knowledge. It yield better design and better stewardship of a place long term.
Yeah. So once you do the conceptual phase and start developing your design, like plan and ideas, how does that move forward?
Yeah. So after the seed of the design is generated, after we find a design concept, then we generate two, sometimes three site alternatives. Two site alternatives usually suffices. And usually I like to do those by hand, just so the client really understands things are nice and loose and still very fluid,
Mhm.
and give them two different spatial layouts of of the proposed space that are distinct. And then usually the preferred design direction integrates the best ideas from those two site alternatives into the preliminary final design, or I sometimes call it the draft final design. And then we get the client's feedback on that, and that version is digitized and iterate it one more time and into a final stage. That's pretty much the design process I use for each design. And of course, some clients engage us to do construction documents and also uh, implementation guidance.
Yeah. And do you also do some maintenance afterwards, like after you do implementation sometimes?
Yeah, I think implementation is very instructive.
Mhm.
There's projects we've been stewarding for 8+ years,
Oh,
and yeah, it's very useful to manage a place across months and years, hopefully decades.
yeah, yeah. So, Zach, you told me a lot about your experience and, working in the space of designing agricultural landscapes that include other functions. What is your advice for young landscape architects who are trying to enter the space of designing agriculture?
I would say the more hands-on experience they can get, the better on a working farm, and also just visiting various farms of different scales and that are producing different products. And since they're in the design profession, being able to critique what's working and what could perhaps be improved, a useful framework to have.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. And I also want to add one more thing, which is like to check out amazing work, your website. You have, some projects that you display there and some projects that maybe you can talk about more if we reach out to you. And, I can see that you're so willing to learn, so sorry, to teach someone like me about designing agriculture. So yeah, I also recommend that they check amazing work like your work and also other people's work in designing agriculture.
Yeah, yeah. If there can be internships with the firm that is doing ecological agriculture design, that's a great way to immerse oneself in in this profession. There's a lot of opportunities to learn and to give back in this profession.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, one last question before we end our conversation. I'm really enjoying this time, but I don't want to make it very long for the audience. It's like a random question, but if we want to name this practice of design in agricultural landscapes, what can we call it? Like, you just state this word, ecological agricultural design, but you sometimes also say farmscape design. So what would you call this work?
Let's call it farmscape because I think that's a more accepted, perhaps, yeah, I think it's going to be a more accepted phrase than ecological. I mean, every site in the world, it has its own unique ecology.
Mhm.
But I think I like the phrase farmscape design personally.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you so much, Zach, for the amazing conversation we had. It's an honor to talk to you for the
Thank
second
you, Ishraq.
time, and I hope we keep this conversation going because I'm learning a lot, and I'm sure our audience also learned a lot from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ishraq. It was a deep pleasure and continue to do good work there. I'm so excited about your results that you'll be collecting for your PhD work.
Yeah, thank you. And
Very,
I'm
very, very
sure,
important.
yeah, thank you. And I will share some of that with you and hopefully also with the audience. Thank you.